Rarely have I been in the past 4 years, and I visited a church, actually got really fed from, I don't know, the word in like a 35-minute sermon. If that, maybe 25 minutes, we're spending 70 to 80% as a TED Talk.
Are either in the kingdom of heaven or they're not. If they're in the kingdom of heaven, they're the sheep from Matthew, when Jesus talks about separating the sheep from the goats. If they're not, they're the goats. And what you have here is an entire church structure where the large majority of these people are the goats from Matthew. They proclaim to be believers, they proclaim to be Christians, but they do not know the word. They don't believe the word. They don't know who they are.
All right, dude, it has been a really, really long time since I've been wanting to get on a podcast in person with you. We've done a couple remote podcasts, but Dalton Darnell, welcome to Not in Church.
Thanks for having me. I've spent my whole life not in church.
That's right. Well, that's right, but it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to dive into in a little bit, but just a little preference for people being introduced to Dalton, maybe for the first time on this YouTube channel or this podcast. Dalton and me have been best friends since maybe 15 years old, 14, 15, maybe a couple years in there to solidify best friend tag. But we do life together. So really wanted to bring you in, man. You're super incredibly busy. You've got 2 to 3 businesses that you run personally. Your wife's got a business. It's tough to get you anywhere. You travel a ton. We'll dive into, what I'm calling your ministry, your podcast,
Okay.
what you do professionally, but how you really tie everything in. So let's just start off, man, by saying, or just asking the question, when did you actually, in terms of your faith, feel like you found Jesus?
Ooh. Okay, are we talking like the beginning of the transformation?
Yeah. So, we can say, and I've talked about this in other podcasts, having knowledge of the word and not actually living it is lukewarm.
Yes.
It's worse than anything.
Yes.
Right. So, actually being convicted in the sense of, okay, found Jesus. I'm starting to figure this out a little bit. I know I need to live differently, but I'm tired of just doing the same old.
Yes.
And so I want to do life completely different for him in every aspect.
So for me, that would have been when I went to tech school for the military, is when I really started searching for a different way. Getting married, I got married 2 months before I went to tech school. And that conviction started like, you're not enough, started before the wedding. But the actual application or the actual initiation into searching for something different, how to be a better man for my wife, started in tech school. I read a book called Things Men Only Know.
That's a good one.
Yeah, my dad gave it to me, and it really kind of started me on that path. Now we're talking, and that was 10 years ago now, and we're talking about a lot of change has happened since then, and the transformation process, I think, gets lost on many believers. I believe that you become a Christian, you think, oh, it's just going to be so different. It's not. It's a transformation over time and experiences, right? So like manhood in and of itself is an initiation process. It's an initiation over thousands of little moments where you learn how to be a better person. And some of these come from successes and some of them come from failures. But for me, that understanding that I wasn't enough and the really truly searching what Christ's heart for me was, it started in that time frame.
So I'm going to get to this question. Let me just go ahead and ask you, so you can be thinking about it. Then I'm going to give my answer to it.
Okay.
Because it's really the premise of this podcast. Not in church. Episode a week ago, came back, long hiatus. something I preach to you and anybody else that's creating content. You got to bring value, but you got to bring consistency. When you're not consistent, it's going to die. It's not going to be successful. And if you're trying to do kingdom work, well, nothing's going to happen, right? And you're going to go backwards yourself. So the question is, what's your problem with church? So think about it. Let me walk through my journey in terms of, and I'm going to try to be quick because I've been accused of doing like a Trump weave. I'm just everywhere. And then I somehow maybe will answer a question or maybe like never actually do it. So my problem with the current church setting. So when I say church, okay, let's just get an understanding. The church, biblically, theologically, is the Christians coming together to make the church, right? So local bodies. I'm talking brick building, brick physical location type of building. So my experience, as you know, listeners probably don't know unless you've watched some other stuff that I've been on and kind of heard this. Grew up Church of Christ, you know that very well, right? Like the really conservative side of it. At some point in my early mid-20s, went to non-denominational church. If you're familiar with the state of Alabama, Church of the Highlands, it's a mega church, right? They've got 20 plus campuses across the state. I think one in Georgia. They're pretty big. And so that's where me personally, I actually figured out one like relational faith and like, what does it actually look like? Like, instead of just having knowledge and just being dead in faith and just saying, well, I go to church and, like maybe your opinion of me back in high school, college was, maybe he's got the most faith or kind of, like it seems like he's kind of got it, but like, you knew my, I'm not going to say trauma, but like the struggles with my faith and going to the Church of Christ I was at, right? With like my family and everything. So my problem with what the church is today, and I've got many of them, but like the one big one is ever since the pandemic, so a couple of years ago, and it's been going on for a while, but it's super apparent right now. And if you're into data like I am, data is pretty clear, right? In terms of funding, in terms of where time's going, offerings going. We could do a whole nother podcast on that. I don't want to spend all our time on it, but church in terms of what it is, not the theological, but what I'm saying physically is a scalability proposition. Right? That Church of the Highlands, ARC, if anybody's heard of ARC, associated of related churches, basically pretty awesome like organization. I think it's kind of gone one direction at this point, but essentially helped to plant a lot of churches. If you go to, even you can go Baptist, Methodist, not Church of Christ or stuff like that, but if you kind of stay in more of that Pentecostal, Baptist type vibe, non-denominational, it all looks the same. It's extremely cookie cutter. And the scalability proposition I'm talking about is their main concern is to scale locally to become bigger, more campuses, more satellite campuses, right? And we're not worried about Matthew 28. And it's spreading the gospel to all nations. Then you mix in, and I got a big issue with this. People listening don't. So I can't wait to hear your thoughts on it. Is in terms of the investment from tithing, offering, special gifts into the church financially, that in terms of production and worship, on average, for a congregation that's like 250 to 400, and then you can go much higher, we're looking at low 200,000 per year, all the way up to 4 million on average. And all they do is just post their stuff. They live stream to YouTube. There's no actual strategy in terms of creating the content, using what God's given you, the best ability to, in my opinion, to fulfill Matthew 28 of what it looks right now. So there's a ton of waste, and all the people on, not all churches, not all people that work at churches, what's the number one thing that they work towards every single week? Sunday. And it's not every single day. So my issue is that the church is turned into a scalability proposition. It all looks the same. There's nothing but TED Talks rarely have I been in the past 4 years, and I've lived in Alabama, Florida, Oklahoma, and now Alabama again. Have I visited a church, Dalton, and actually got really fed from, I don't know, the word,
Yeah.
in like a 30, 35-minute sermon. If that, maybe 25 minutes, we're spending 70 to 80% as a TED Talk that I could get off YouTube or any other platform. So that's my problem. Wanted to establish it. What's your problem with the church?
All right. So I would have answered this question wildly different a year ago. The problem is that the people that run the church don't know their identity. And it shows, right? We're using measurable things to depict success of something that's unmeasurable. So you need to be, if I was a pastor and I worked at a church, I would measure my success based on my congregation's ability to love people. And I don't mean people that are like you. I mean all people, right? So in the book, it says that the first commandment is to love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. The second is like this, to love your neighbor as you love yourself. There's no stipulation to this. There's no love your neighbor as you love yourself if he's like you. There's no love your neighbor if you love yourself when they're kind, right? It just says to love them. And what I see, I heard a guy on a podcast, his name's Jamie Winship, and he said one of the coolest things I've ever heard, in my opinion, at least in my adult life. He said that Christians, Muslims, atheists, it's like they're all gang names. It's either the kingdom of heaven or it's not. Like those are your two options. And when you start looking at from that perspective, then you can break it down into the church world, right? So you got Baptist, Methodist, Church of Christ, Pentecostal, Latter-day Saints, Mormons, all of it, right? They're all gang names. These people are either in the kingdom of heaven or they're not. If they're in the kingdom of heaven, they're the sheep from Matthew when Jesus talks about separating the sheep from the goats. If they're not, they're the goats. And what you have here is an entire church structure in a country or all over the world where the large majority of these people are the goats from Matthew. They just are. They proclaim to be believers. They proclaim to be Christians, but they do not know the word. They don't believe the word. They don't know who they are. And so my premise for this is there's 340 million people that live in America. 220 million of those 340 million proclaim to be on our team. So can you explain to me why we have the problems that we have in this country? Because if there's really 220 million believers, true followers of Christ, who understood their identity and their purpose for the kingdom, we would have no problems. None. So the same goes for the state of Alabama. There's 5.1 million people who live in Alabama. 3.7 million of them say they're Christians. Is that your experience at the Walmart? No, it's not. You're not surrounded by believers at the Walmart. You know what I mean? So it's an identity issue, just like everything else is. And you have to operate from the understanding that people are going to make mistakes and have trouble and all the things because it's the human condition. But with that being said, the church is no different. It's no different than the rest of the world. Lots of people have used it, for financial gain, and they don't know any better, And James 4:17 says, if you know the good you ought to do and you do not do it, that is a sin for you. Well, the good that you know you ought to do and the good that I know I ought to do might be different at this time in our lives, right? And so I can't sit here and say that you should have done this. It's a sin that you didn't do it because I'm not on your path with God, right? But what I can do is I know the good I ought to do is love you. And if I don't love you, that's a sin for me because I know that's what I'm supposed to do. And then through me loving you is how you come to know that that's the good you ought to do. And that's how the world changes. That's how the kingdom of heaven gets built, is through this sacrificial act of servant leadership, just loving people. That's it. And if you stuck me in front of 250 people and said that they were my congregation, this is what I would ask them to do every week. I would say it's your job for the kingdom of heaven to use the identity that God gave you to love the people on your path. And if you do that, we will change the world. It needs to start with your spouse or your family. Your home needs to be filled with this. Once your home is filled with this, God will take you and your family, and He will spread that love to your community, the people who are around you. That is the church. The church has nothing to do with brick and mortar and parking lots and freaking strobe lights and coffee. Like, that's not the church. That's a building where people go and where somebody makes money. The church is this act of sacrificial love. And I think a lot of people have lost sight of this. And I think that the enemy is really good at telling people they're doing a good job and then being okay with that job that they're doing. And they don't even know the enemy's the one telling them to do it. But you see all this stuff in the news about people calling churches about baby formula and all this crap. You know what I mean? And I don't know why anyone was surprised. And I have guys that work for me who find themselves in a hard time, financially quite often. And I think to myself often, what would the church say if they called? Well, if it's a church run by someone who understands their identity, they're going to get help. If it's a church run from someone who doesn't understand their identity, they're going to tell them, "Oh, I'll pray for you." Well, thanks. You know what I mean? From the non-believer's perspective, yeah, I mean, I can't eat that prayer.
So, walk me through this from your journey, right? And I mean, obviously, we don't have to get into everything, but just kind of highlight it a little bit, right? Is it safe to say that your granddad probably was the most influential person of faith for you as you were growing up?
Yes.
Okay. And your granddad was a pastor.
Yes.
And he was a counselor too,
Mhm.
right? So he worked with, people in all walks of life,
Mhm.
marriage, individual, everything,
Mhm.
right? Do you see where the church is right now from your best example growing up, right? And then obviously the past couple years, you've really, really flourished. I mean, this past year,
Mhm.
I mean, you starting your podcast and, a little bit about your business and what you do. I mean, it's a cowboy world,
Mhm.
and I've been around people in your scene a couple times,
Mhm.
and they're very tough people,
Mhm.
right? Super serious. I've been to a cowboy church one time. It's different.
Mhm.
Um, do you think your example from your granddad and what you see now, right, as you lead your family, you lead multiple businesses, you're preaching the word of God everywhere you're at, your podcast, but a ton of physical locations. Do you think, well, I guess really, where do you think the church has kind of gone the opposite direction in terms of like actual living
Mhm.
discipleship? Because the cowboy world is way different. And
Mhm.
to me, just spending a little bit of time with them, they're more realistic, way more authentic to what the everyday Christian believer actually exemplifies, right? Because I mean, life sucks
I think
here on earth. It's Satan's playground.
they do a similar thing. And this is the beauty of it all. It's not the beauty, it's the beauty for Satan. It's not the beauty for the kingdom of heaven, but I think Christians and cowboys do the same thing. They love people who are like them. And that's why you have so many different sections of the church. That's why when I said it's the kingdom of heaven or it's not, I named 6 different denominations of the same damn thing. Okay? Because people have a hard time loving people who are different from them. Cowboys are no different, right? So in the cowboy world, like a wannabe, the term for a wannabe is a gunsel. That would be like if you went out and bought Wranglers and a Pearl Snap and decided to come to a Brandon and do what you knew to do, right? They would call you a gunsel. And cowboys love other cowboys, but cowboys also have a hard time loving other people outside of their realm of influence. Believers are no different. So because we might disagree, now I got to go start my own church because I don't agree with the way you tithe, or I don't agree with the way you handle food, or I don't agree with how your wife's hair's cut, you know. And I had a conversation with a guy a couple weeks ago. I was at a private lesson teaching a guy to rope, and he brought one of his friends. And somehow or another, we got to talking about gay folks. And he says to me, he's an older gentleman, he's probably mid-50s. And he said, I just can't love those people. That's for your generation to do. And I just looked at him. I looked at him and I said, are you a believer? And he was like, yeah, I go to church every Sunday. I said, you don't know the Christ that I follow. You are not a follower of Christ if that's your position on loving anyone, whether they're a Muslim, a Buddhist, a communist, a black dude, a gay person, insert anything other than what you are, which is a 55-year-old white dude. If you can't love those other people, you do not know Jesus. And he was like, I've been going to church for 50 years. And I was like, well, it's amazing that you don't know this. That's the failure of the church. The failure is that it isn't the greatest two commandments. It isn't love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and then love your neighbor as you love yourself, right? It's love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love the people who are like you.
Here's a thought, two-part, and you can go any direction you want to with it. Why do you think a pastor would have a problem with you in terms of the way that, you see the church as itself right now, right? So, question one, so part one, why do you think pastors have a problem with you?
Mm-hmm.
And two, why haven't I met or seen more versions of Dalton in terms of a faith-filled believer in, I don't know, 33 years of church?
Mm-hmm.
So, why do you think that is?
So part one, a pastor that knows his identity and knows Christ's heart isn't going to have a problem with me. We will be very equally yoked. Very much so. The goats will. The people who are in it for themselves, who are succumbing to the desires of the flesh to be famous or rich or whatever, those people would have a problem with me. And then as far as more I believe that most believers that think the way I do have found themselves wildly outnumbered. And they operate the same way I do as far as you just go around loving people. So very rarely are you going to get what you want if you walk into a room and tell somebody what they're doing wrong. So there's two things needed for conviction, in my opinion. If I'm going to convict you.
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing is I would need respect, or I would have to have respect. And you can convict someone the second you meet them if you have their respect. So my example for this is I travel all over the country and teach people how to rope. And I can walk into an arena with almost anyone and correct an action, convict an issue, right? And they will listen to me. Well, the reason why they listen to me is because they respect my ability with the tool, right? They've watched hundreds of hours of me using a rope horseback and on the ground. They respect my abilities. And so I can convict them. The only other way that you can convict someone is a relationship. You must have a relationship with this person. And so these people that walk around, and they don't even really walk around because they're too chicken shit to say anything to your face. They say it on the internet. They run around on the internet and they tell people what they're doing wrong, that they're going to burn in hell. They have no respect. They have no relationship. It does nothing but drive people further from Christ. That's what most believers do, is they spew off at the mouth these verses that they learned in Sunday school that talks about what's right and what's wrong, right? There's no respect. There's no relationship. So my argument to this is, if you simply went into someone's life, had empathy for their situation, and loved them, at some point, they're going to come to the end of themselves and go, man, I am just not enough. And then who in my life really has it put together, right? And it would be, well, it would be the guy that's following the king. It would be the sheep, right? And he would go to that guy and say, man, what are you doing different than I'm doing? What's going on? And this is what you're told in church, but nobody teaches you how to act it out. And then no one listens to the conviction of Christ. Like when you treat someone like shit at Walmart, you call your wife and you tell her about the story, and then she validates it, but you're not listening to that little voice in your chest that God's going, man, that dude has an identity too, and I love him too, and I made him in my image too, and you were just mean to him. And then if you ignore that conviction long enough, at some point you become righteous, right? So if you read the Gospels, and I love this imagery. If you read the Gospels and you watch The Chosen, if you haven't watched The Chosen, go watch The Chosen. It's freaking incredible. If you look at these two things, okay, Jesus is walking around down here on earth, and he is loving people. That is what he did. It's just loved people. Some hard truths had to be said. He did it in love. That's what it says to do. Tell the truth in love, right? The Pharisees, the guys who literally hung the Savior of the universe on a freaking cross, okay? What did they do while Jesus was here? They argued. They argued about the Bible, about the rules. That's all they did.
Yeah, that's true.
That's all they did. So they argued whether Jesus was blasphemy, whether he was this, that, and other. They argued the prophets. They did all this, right? This is from the beginning of time. The leaders in the church argued. That's what they did. Who's right? The funny thing about The Chosen and the funny thing about the Gospels is you watch these characters in this story argue these things, and guess how many of them were right? None of them. They were all wrong. They were all wrong. And so if you walk around down here on earth and do anything other than love people, and there's going to be opportunities where you tell the truth in love. If somebody is living in sexual sin, okay, and I'm talking about someone who's gay, I'm talking about someone who's straight, okay, there's plenty of sexual sin to run around. There's plenty of it. I got it. You got it. That dude across the hall there's got it, right? If you run around telling somebody, right, you're going to burn in hell for all eternity, right? You're arguing what sin is worse, what law is better, what rule to actually follow. You are a Pharisee. And Pharisees hate people like me. Why? Because I say what you're talking about is stupid. It's not the point. It's clear in the book, right? So I think for me, man, it's the simplification of the gospel, right? You love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. James 4:17. If you know the good you ought to do and you do not do it, it's a freaking sin for you. So do the good you know you ought to do. Focus on the good. Ignore the bad. The good becomes greater. The bad becomes lesser. Period. And if you love people, right? The King of the universe loves this. It's the second greatest commandment, is to love people. So just do that. And then when you feel, because it's going to happen, when you feel the hate creep up in your heart, right? When this guy comes up to you at the restaurant and he's an absolute flaming gay dude, right? Talking like a girl, wearing hair and all the things, and you feel the hate creep up in your heart for this guy, ask God to abolish it. Say, Lord, I have hate in my heart. we went to the freaking indoor park with my kids. And we're in there playing, and this lady comes in for her shift. She works there. Full Muslim garb. Okay, I was in the military. They taught us all about the Muslim religion and what, to look for and all these things. Situational awareness. You know what I'm saying? I've heard stories. I've had guys on the podcast that fought over there, had friends die over there, fighting this, the real radical side of this religion, honestly. And this woman comes in full Muslim garb, and I immediately hated her. Like, was sweating pissed. And I looked at her hands, lily white hands. Lady is whiter than me. And I'm like, and I just had a moment there I was like, Lord, what is this? Like, I don't even know this person. This is like, root this out of me. Get this hate out of my heart. What is that? And I just repented right there in the middle of the park playing with Wiley. I was like, Lord, tear this out. That's craziness. I don't know this person. My job isn't to hate her, regardless of what she believes. So it's coming. It's going to come. The hate in your heart's going to come out. You're going to have setbacks. You're going to fail. But that's when you go to the king and go, Lord, what is this? And the bad part is, this is where the church thing comes in to me, is you take a bunch of people who are similar, a lot alike, and you put them in the same room, and everybody's hating on everybody. That group of people hates these other people, right? So the Baptists make fun of the Church of Christ. The Methodists make fun of the Baptists, right?
That's true, yeah.
Yeah, and so this is what happens. So my little group of people's righteous, right? Our rules are the rules. This is what we're supposed to do. Those people over there are freaking idiots. Mm-hmm. Like, who thinks that the Church of Christ are the only people going to heaven? Where does it say that in the book? It doesn't, right? And so these things... So then, like, if I got it with a group full of my military buddies, I was like, there's this lady in a freaking jihad in the dadgum, in the indoor park in the middle of Alabama. Every damn one of them would be like, yeah, dude, that's sorry son of a gun. We shouldn't even have Muslims in this country. Right?
Yeah, 100%.
So they're going to feed your hate.
Yep.
Where does the truth come from, Daryl? The king. The king. You don't take that hate in your heart to another group of people, another group of sinners, right? The goats, and say, hey, validate my hate. There shouldn't be any hate. Like, it doesn't say that anywhere, right? We hate the sin, not the sinner. And there's people you walk away from. And the best example there is when Jesus tells his disciples to go out 2 by 2, right? He tells them to go speak to the Jews. And he says, hey, fellas, run down there. If someone invites you in their home, give them everything that I've given you. Leave your blessing upon the home and go to the next home. If they turn you away, wipe your feet at the door, and better to be Sodom and Gomorrah than that home on the day of judgment. There it is. And so for me and you, we're not Jewish, we're Christians. So it's the same for us. I walk into someone's home that's a Christian just like me, and I give them what Christ has given me, and if they take it, awesome. If they don't, awesome. That's on God. That's God's business. And we'll pray for that, but you get what I'm saying. Like, you're not going to save them all. So you just love them.
I think very specifically in the Deep South, too, when you look at different denominations, my favorite response to just the word denomination, and this is coming from Church of Christ trauma, but for the past 10 years, I've been in a lot of different churches, Catholic churches. I haven't been to like an LDS church. I know a couple guys that are former LDS, and honestly, they probably know the Bible better than I do. In terms of like book, chapter, verse. Yeah. I mean, very impressive. But one of the things that a lot of these different denominations, I'm just going to say denomination, right? It's just easier. Is they say that there is one church, right? Jesus' church, Big C church, but they are the true representation of the Big C church. Mm-hmm. To where a lot of discussions I have with...
the Church of Christ and stuff?
No, this is pretty much across the board, right? So when you're talking about the split in thoughts of theological views. It could be as simple as, women wearing a head covering. I mean, like when Paul is preaching and Peter, I mean, they're diving into that in the New Testament. It could be as simple as that, which creates a division within a division of a denomination. It doesn't have to be Church of Christ. It could be Baptist, Methodist. I mean, any of them, right? I mean, like that's why we have so many different denominations of churches, but they all think at the end of the day, and it's something that I actually kind of admire a little bit in terms of convictions, morals, ethics, biblical values, is that if you're going to buy in, right? But they all share the same viewpoint that their version of the church, or those types of Christians that come together and gather there, that's the true representation of Jesus's big C church, establishment, Matthew 28, and so on through Acts. So, man, I just sometimes think, especially when I talk with Catholics, Catholicism is one of my favorite, not to debate, but to talk with people and really just try to understand it. The different books, Mary, the whole thing. My big concern is that we just get so caught up in this who's right, who's wrong. We, one, miss the main thing, that's Jesus, right? Two, I think the heaven, the new earth, and I've had this talk with family in the past couple months, is, man, if you make it to heaven, you make it to the new earth, right? And somehow we can recognize, oh, there's Dalton. Dalton made it. Congrats, Dalton, right? If we're actually able to like recognize and identify. I think you're going to be really upset with Jimmy, who is a Catholic down the street, because Jimmy made it to heaven. And that thought, in terms of faith, eternity, what the main thing is, I have gotten so many Christians irritated and upset with me over it, because, even over baptism, right? Like salvation. And, even on that, everywhere I read in the New Testament, what's combined with accepting of Jesus, salvation, it's baptism. We got the thief on the cross. I've heard a lot of other opinions of like he was technically under the law of Moses because Jesus hadn't died yet. I think we start to get too deep. We get lost. It was Jesus himself that gave him a pass, right? Wasn't baptized. But we've got all this division, man, right? And you throw into the scalability proposition that I kind of led off this conversation with, of just church is so consumed with just getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and the finances come in. We're spending so much money on production, worship, all this stuff, right? And, we're not taking care of people in our community. We sure as heck are not spreading the gospel to the greatest ability that we have. And we're condemning, right? Condemning, and also so hard not condemning. Because we are called to judge other faith-filled believers. I mean, like, those are the people that we can judge. Those are the people that we can actually correct according to the New Testament. But, man, I'm just concerned in terms of just not where the country's at, but Christians in general, they can't have conversations like this and just walk away and say, man, like, what was a nugget from that to actually be challenged myself personally, individually, spiritually? And is there some truth to that? Because we get so caught up with the way that we were raised, right? With theological viewpoints. I mean, I grew up with the fear of hell. I mean, it was like, that's why I was a Christian.
Yeah.
Right? And I didn't live according to scripture hardly at all. Sex before marriage, been there, drinking, I mean, I pretty much done it all. Not like hardcore drugs or anything, but in terms of just living in the world, I tasted it and ran with it for a long time. And I had this outside persona that they're like, man, it's Daryl. He grew up in a really conservative family and was just incredibly fake, And so I'm concerned that like Christians can't be objective enough to dive into scripture and not condemn the whole freaking world of other faith-filled believers, because they know in their hearts that they ain't got it all the way 100%. How could you, especially with the way that the Bible's written,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's poetically written in portions. It's very literally written in portions. And the division, man, is when we look at theological debates, we look at different topics, could be anything,
Mm-hmm.
Jesus, Old Testament, tithing, whatever, right? Is that the Christians are always on the opposite side, to where if I read something that I think is literal, they say, well, no, that's kind of poetically written.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it blows me away. So like, what do you think? I mean, like, what's your concern? I mean, like, do you share any of that? Do you see any of that with the people that you've traveled around, people you've grown up? Like that's my experience, but especially where you are in your life and faith. You're writing books, you got a pretty ongoing, successful podcast, doing a lot of really good stuff with your business and sharing faith in it. I mean, what's your concerns long term?
The whole time you're talking, my question is, I wonder if God ever gets irritated with people assuming he doesn't have common sense. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you just apply a shade of common sense and then your own humanity to some of this stuff, it's like, my goal is to have a relationship with Christ, right? And if the rule in the Bible is that I'm to forgive a fella 70 times, 7 times, which is not really, like, you don't calculate that up. It's just saying always forgive a guy, right? I wonder how many times I'm having a bad day and my Father in heaven comes to me and goes, it's okay, man. Like, I get it. You're having a rough day. You know what I mean? And I wonder if there's a guy that truly finds his identity and his purpose in life and comes to know the King in the same way that I have, but somebody hasn't dunked him off in a tub of water and he gets hit by a bus. And if God doesn't go at the gate, dang, man, we didn't make it to baptism, but welcome. Like, I hate you. I hate you came to know me and got hit by a bus, but I'm glad you're here. Come on in. Like, he's a good father. Like, do you look at your son and apply rules in this way? Right? It's like, it would be like having the rule of, you got to take your shoes off before you come in the house. Okay? So your rule at your house is you got to take your shoe. The kids got to take their shoes off before they come in the house. You know what I'm saying? And if you don't, this is a hardcore rule, and let's make it as obnoxious as possible and say that I'm gonna whip your fanny if you come in here with them shoes on, right? And you're in there sitting at the kitchen table answering emails, and little Flip comes running in with his shoes on. But Flip's got to take a dump, and he didn't really have the time to take his shoes off. So what you gonna do? You gonna go in there and snatch him off the pot and wear him out for wearing them shoes in the house, or you gonna have some grace? You can go, man, well, I'm glad you didn't crap your pants. Next time, let's take them shoes off. You know what I mean? Like, common sense. Like, he's a good father, right? A bad father would snatch him off the pot and whip his fanny for coming in the house with them shoes on. This is the rule. You're going to follow the rule to the nth degree, and if you don't, I don't care the circumstances, I'm going to beat you. That don't work. That ain't a thing. Poor guy just crap his pants at the back door. You know what I'm saying? So I look at this in this way because I see God as a good father. Like, he loves me and wants good things for me. And he believes that I'm awesome. And he made me for a purpose, right? And that purpose is simply to love people. But I think all of these things are moot points. I think they're silliness that the devil uses to get us arguing about stuff that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So if it doesn't matter, then what matters? Right? Well, and what people will say, they'll be like, well, that, it says this in the Bible, it says that in the Bible, and it says this, and Paul said this.
This chapter, verse,
and Isaiah said this, and yada, 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 right? It's a transformation. Transformations take time. So you take a new believer, right? You're talking about a baby child. That's what a new believer is. And you throw them into the law, and you say, these are all the freaking rules. You better get baptized. You better take communion then. You better do this and blah, 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 right? It's too much. It's a transformation over time. And as God presents himself to you as a good father, you start seeking this relationship with him. Okay? So I'm going to go to the Word. I'm going to pray. I'm going to learn his heart for me. And then I'm going to learn his rules. You know what I'm saying? And hey, guess what? I'm probably going to get dunked in some water at some point. You know what I mean? But let me ask you this. If someone comes to me and says, hey, I know you just came to know Christ and you accepted him into your heart, right? But there's this little thing we got to do here. If I don't dunk you off in some water, it don't count. So let's get in the water, you know? Is that guy saved? No. No. He's not, right? He's getting in the water because some dude said he had to get in the water. When baptism is real, is when you, like, I was baptized at the age of 13, and then I wasn't a freaking believer for 12 more years. So was I going to heaven? No, I wasn't. So all this stuff, dude, can become a distraction. But once you come to know the Father in a way that's like, I want to know his heart for me, that's when you start looking at the prophecies. That's when you start looking at the laws. That's when you start looking at the principles, at the things Jesus said, the way he treated people, the disciples. That's when you start looking into all these things. You're like, dude, man, this is the greatest love story I've ever read, right? And that's when the transformation begins. And I think we put a lot of pressure on guys and gals who just kind of want to know what's going on here, and they don't even know the heart of the king yet, you know? And so the way that they come to know the heart of the king is through a believer, a true sheep of the great shepherd, loving them. Hey man, come on, I don't care about your junk. I don't care. I don't care that you smoked meth. I don't care that you got 2 baby mamas. I don't care. Come with me. Walk with me down the road. Let me love you, man. Right? You can't eat this week? Here's some money. You ain't got nowhere to sleep? Sleep in my office. Like, that's loving a guy, right? Mm-hmm. And all of this starts just for the conviction of the person listening, right? This all starts to end when we do this at home. When you teach your children their identity, teach them how to love people, and then the kingdom grows, right? You love a guy, he comes to know the Father, he comes to know the heart of the Father for him, he loves his wife, he loves his kid, the kingdom grows.
So the family aspect, marriage, raising kids, it's something that we do live together quite a bit, really on a daily basis. I mean, we probably talk extensively for at least 10 to 20 minutes, maybe 6 days a week.
At least.
So want to jump in that in a little bit, but I've got 2 other thoughts for you because of what God's done in your life the past year and really the past 7, 8 years in terms of social media, mm-hmm. YouTube, Instagram, TikTok. I mean, like you get over 100,000 on TikTok. Let's do it.
Like 50, I think.
50? Okay. Yeah. Well, I doubled you. So in Jesus' name, you'll be 100,000 by the time this comes out, right? I got you right now with it. Yeah. Right after we get done, I'm going to lay hands on you for it.
Not in church, baby.
Not in church, right? You definitely you're not going to get that joke there. At least not even church up in it. Do you think with your YouTube channel, your TikTok, your Instagram, social media in general, long form, short form content, do you think you're able to reach more people, share Jesus with more people, save more souls, right? Because it's not something we really talk about. I don't know if it's like something for you. It's like I'm trying to save souls. But I know a big thing is trying to clean up some of this godly masculinity that's became incredibly weak,
Mhm.
very apparent over the past couple years. But do you think you can do more with your social presence, the podcast, all the other stuff socially, right,
Mhm.
than a pastor in a church can right now?
I can do nothing apart from the King. So all of the following that I have is divinely appointed for reasons I do not know. What I do know is that, the mission statement for the Art of Suffering podcast is the wisdom is the wise application of failure. And simply my goal with the podcast is to share my failures and to share the guest failures with the people listening in order for them to gain wisdom and maybe not fail as much in their own life. And so I simply share my testimony, what I'm having a hard time with. Um, Souls are not of my concern. That is the king. The king's job is to save people. And if he uses me to do it, that's awesome. I will say that the outpour of support and love from the listeners is unbelievable to me. And they encourage me as much as I encourage them. I had a guy email me yesterday. It's like, never weaken, man, and I, and I wrote it in the first paragraph of my book. It's like, I am simply a man on a road, and none of this comes from Dalton. This is all from the King of the universe, not Dalton.
Yeah. Okay. So let's say that's understood,
Mm-hmm.
right? Do you think you could be more effective?
I think it's a situational deal. So, like, again, my followers and listeners have I have a relationship with them because I've shared my suffering with them. They also, quite a few of them, have respect for me because of what I can do with a rope, and so they listen to me because of this. I think the same would go for any pastor that shared his sufferings in a truthful way, that has walked the path with people, not just stood behind the pulpit and told them what they're doing wrong, but actually shared in the suffering with them. So I think there's a lot of guys out there. It's like Pastor Philip Anthony Mitchell comes to mind for me. Like
He's good.
every other thing I listen to from
He's
that
good.
guy, he's sharing his suffering
Well,
with these people.
it's because he's being real.
Yes.
And like he's actually, I mean, it's like the whole heart behind this podcast and my time in Christian creative church ministry. Um, I just want to have conversations, teach, disciple when opportunities come,
Mm-hmm.
right? And just be real and talk about the stuff that people are actually struggling with.
Yeah.
Right? Keep the main thing the main thing. If you're struggling in your marriage for XYZ, whatever the reason or the main fill is,
Mm.
I can guarantee from a man's perspective, it's intimacy, sex, it's being complimented. It's going to revolve around a couple things because I'm a guy and we do life together, and I do life with a couple other guys that are older.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same rinse repeat thing, but never have I ever. And I've listened to a lot of sermons, man. I mean, Philip, he's one of the few,
Yeah.
right? It's one of the reasons
He's
why
the sheep.
it's one of the reasons why he's getting attacked so hard.
Yes.
Right? Because he's so freaking real
Mm-hmm.
about legit stuff and can actually say the word sex.
Yeah.
It's like, man, okay, intimacy can mean a lot, but like literally, like we're talking about this, right? And for some reason, we're in a church, we're in a setting, and like the leader is supposed to be leading the body, man, right? And get into the dirt with them is scared to be real and talk real with them,
Mm-hmm.
right? And so the relatability factor of the guy, the family, the woman, the kids, whatever, right? Them going to church on Sunday, it is such a non-relational aspect. So when I let off and say, hey, it took me a long time to figure out like actual relational faith and like going to God the Father for everything and actually trying to do what the word says. Really hard to do consistently, right? Because if I got the knowledge, and I'm too lazy or weak or sinful to actually try to attempt to be consistent at it, I'm going to bear bad fruit in a lot of different areas of my life.
Yeah.
But I just, it brings me to this idea too of like celebrity pastorship and like pastors. And it's pastors, preachers leading these churches.
Mm-hmm.
And I've attended a lot of them, and I've attended some big ones where like the pastor was out there, right? Not a few, right? It just like, or not many. Where are you at in terms of like my frustration of that? Because like I think we're on the same page, but I'm trying to dig in a little bit deeper of like, there's so many of these leaders that from my vantage point, and again, I've traveled quite a bit and I've done the church ministry and Christian content thing for a while now.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many, like they're not real, right? Their Sunday messages or TED Talks.
Mm-hmm.
They just are. And there's this celebrity feel where the people, because the churches have gotten so large,
Mm-hmm.
they don't know their pastor
Yeah.
at all.
Again, and my viewpoint on this has changed recently.
Okay.
Last 6 months. Okay. They're goats. They don't know who they are. They do not know their identity. And if they did, they would not be that way. And so for me, there's a huge amount of empathy for these guys who don't know who they are. And literally I have this deep longing to get in the room with them. And I hope through this podcast, I'm sitting in the room with you right now. You do not know your identity. And if you did, you would not operate this way. You wouldn't. And I personally think this is how Jesus came to earth and didn't sin. Because 6 months ago, I'd have told you I hated those guys. I mean, really.
Probably so.
Yeah, and I don't. I feel empathy for them because they don't know the Father. They don't know their purpose. That's why I'm writing the book. They don't know the mission, right? If they did, they would. Because once you know it, you can't go back. Truly. Once you truly know it.
All right, so let's turn it now to being a husband, being a father. There's no way I could let you off of this because a lot of the lessons, the encouragement that I've gotten has been from you and from other buddy Michael, which Michael has hosted a good bit of the early days of this podcast. Going to try to get Michael physically here so we can do a bunch of episodes. But I try to explain to people there's 3 steps in terms of proximity, like true, like growth in terms of living by encouragement, but leading to learn how to exemplify Christ. That's kind of a mouthful, but I think for a non-believer, so a non-believer and a believer, what stages to go through? I've kind of come up with 3D. Church, so we got Sunday, right? So you're a non-believer, you probably skipped your way in. At some point, you probably found Christ through a church, right? Physical location, local community. Phase 2, next layer, small group, right? Could be called something else, but you're gonna condense, the population of the Christians down to a smaller group, right? Get together maybe midweek, whatever. Encouragement could be men's group, can be a women's group, and then phase 3, level 3, and this is where you get true proximity of like that day-to-day relational growth, like really doing what the word's doing, and that's doing life with other people.
Mm-hmm.
And the older you get, the smaller your friends get, right? The smaller all those groups get because naturally you're getting older. People sometimes pass off. You stop hanging out with them for one reason or another. But what I've just found, church, small group, doing life together, right? In like true growth, true encouragement, right? Because like I know for men, man, dude, I don't know where I'd be without doing life with you and like our friendship
Mhm.
over the years. Like truly, I don't know. I mean, we've had the most realest and deepest conversations.
Good times.
I mean, we have shared things, I'm sure collectively, I know for my part, things I haven't told anybody, you know, but like you've been there the longest with me. And you know, my heart for godly men, trying to be good husbands, trying to be good fathers, trying not to let that go down, but just men in general. There's a giant masculinity issue, not just in the world, but in the church. Man, godly men have weakened. They have failed as a husband, as a father. They have run away from doing the tougher thing consistently. And church leadership across the board too. There's just a lot of holes in it. And I think over time, and I want you to like touch on the overall arching from what you think, and then dive into the family aspect of being a husband and a father. But I think over time, man, Christians in general have seen such weak godly masculinity leadership in the church. And yeah, I mean, I'm really kind of speaking from like women's perspective too. I mean, I'd love to get some comments here on this episode. If you're a woman listening to it or you shared it and, you know, drop your thoughts right here. But I think this issue, because as we know as husbands, if we don't have that godly masculinity in terms of leadership, our wives will not follow.
No.
Not even close. Now, break it down another layer. If your church doesn't have that godly masculinity leadership, Christians are going to fall off. They're going to stop going, right? They're going to start streaming more. Then they're going to stop streaming. And then they're just going to be lost into the world of saying, well, I believe in God, believe in Jesus. And then they just live in the world, right?
They're goats.
But like, okay, sure. But their heart's not that, you know? Their heart wants more. They're stuck, right? Most Christians are just stuck, man, you know? And so I always, like, especially with other men, I'm like, man, you've got to find proximity outside of church and small group. You've got to do life with other godly men. And, you know, I just lucked up with you because you've hit stages before I've gotten to it in life. That you've already failed in some areas, so then you can really breathe into it. And then Michael's ahead of both of us, and he really breathes into it from a different area. So, I mean, I'm spoiled, like truly blessed in terms of like getting advice and like doing life with two guys like that. So what's your thoughts on maybe my hot take of weakened godly masculinity leadership in the church, but also in the home, you know, because you know, especially where there's children, there's wives, there's women, right? We're talking a church, we're talking family life. That will explode every single freaking time when there's not masculinity, godly masculinity, leadership, Jesus exemplifying in most of everything that they do. That's going to blow up every time, right?
Let me find this real quick. I swear it's in here. Okay. So this is from the book, or I used it in the book, but Galatians 6:8. Whoever sows to please their flesh, from the flesh will reap destruction. Whoever sows to please the Spirit, from the Spirit will reap eternal life. And it also says in Galatians that your flesh is in constant battle with the Spirit. Right? What the Spirit wants is contrary to the flesh. And what the flesh wants most is comfort. So what you're looking at here from a man's perspective, right, is you have to battle that craving for comfort, right? So this is the food that goes in your mouth. This is porn, right? Those are easy ones, right? Selfishness, being selfish, okay? If you find yourself wanting something other than Christ, it's flesh.
Like that's literally everything,
Everything,
right?
everything. So
So,
if you feel like you need something, that's flesh. What you need is Jesus, right? And then Jesus meets the need, right? I need my wife to sleep with me. I need her to have sex with me, right? Swap that to I need Jesus and what his heart is for me. And guess what your wife's going to do? She's going to sleep with you because you're a man worth following, right? So I've heard it said by Joe B. Martin, right? The most dangerous statement in the English language for a man is "I got this," right?
yeah.
That's the premise of this, right? Is you decide what you need, and then a man says, "I got it. I'm going to go get it. I'm going to go get what I need." And you don't need it. You need Jesus, and then Jesus meets the need. And so in the church, the church is simply a topic on this podcast, but this is everything, every man, right? And there's a book by Jocko Willink called Extreme Ownership. And the premise of the book is extreme ownership, right? You own your mistakes. You reap and you sow. You own what's happening. You're the leader, right? And this applies to all of it. You have to own the fact that you are selfish inherently, right? You are sinful. How do you fix that? There's one way. There's one way to be a good husband. There's one way to be a good father. There's no alternate route. You are not good. If you are not a believer, you do not understand your identity, you are not good. You don't got it. And the quicker you come to this realization, the quicker God can transform your heart, right? And then there's this confidence that comes with the strength of God. Like you walk in the world knowing the King of the freaking universe is guiding my steps. I need nothing but him because he will give me everything I need. And then your wife and your children are sanctified through you. Through you. Like, for instance, my wife, I've never seen my wife read the Bible. Ever. Never seen her open the Bible. Do I think she is a believer? Most certainly. You know who else never opened the Bible? The people who lived in Jesus' time. Because it didn't exist. Do you know how they heard the Gospels? Straight from his lips.
Well,
my sons never read the Bible.
Well, they had the Old Testament, right? So it was kind of why they got caught up so much. Jesus came in and it's like, hold up. No,
yeah.
Well, you have Moses' law, but not one of y'all can keep it, right? So let's just be honest. He didn't say this, but I'm walking it through Darrell Lane, right? You need me more than you think. You literally can't keep the law. You all deserve death, you know? And so, oh man, marriage is tough.
Yes, it is.
Raising kids is tough.
It is very, very hard.
I don't want people to walk away from this podcast because I mean I've jumped around topic to topic, and selfishly, I don't know the next time I'm going to get you in for an actual in person, so I kind of wanted to jump around everywhere, and just hit a bunch of topics, but really wanted to kind of focus on the heart of trying to just not suck a little bit less than I did yesterday because marriage is tough, kids is tough. We're both 33. We're both pretty similar, but there's a lot of people listening to this that are maybe a little bit younger, a little bit older, but I think they can relate to a lot of different things that we talked about in this episode. I don't want Christians to feel like we're both attacking the church. Look, I am all for finding a physical body of believers to get together because like we are called in scripture to come and encourage one another, right? To congregate. Like, I mean, it's in there. So, I think one, try to find that, right? I don't want people to feel like they're lesser of a Christian because they're not in the rinse repeat Sunday. It's, I think it's that fear aspect, of like, well, this is what people who follow Jesus, who are Christians, right? This is what they're supposed to do, right? And if they're in a season of transition, whatever's happening, right? I don't want them to be discouraged because at some point they'll probably find a congregation that, look, I mean, you're not going to agree with everything anywhere you go, but I pray and I hope people can find one that the leader is actually being real, right? Because like those are the things that really, really help people. Just be real with me, right? Help me try to do life. Help me try to be a better husband. Help me try to be a better father, right? Help me. That's all I need. And so I want this podcast to be able to help people in that aspect. And it's the literal only value that I want people to gain from it is that they just walk away with like one interesting thought. Maybe it's super controversial, something I said or you said, right? But they walk around and they got that thought in their head. And you say, okay, maybe I'll test it. Like I always tell people, hey, if you hear something, you hear a thought or a conviction, well, don't take my word for it. Go to the word, right? And every time I throw that at people, they actually go to the word. Here's the thing, man. They're surprised it's in there.
Yeah.
And I find myself doing that all the time too. I'm like, man, I think I told you a couple months back, and this one's wild. Didn't realize David and Goliath was in the Bible more than once. Yeah, because I was reading through. I watched House of David season 1, and so I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to read King David, and notice it's in there a couple times. I was like, how in the world did I not know this? I almost kind of felt embarrassed, but you don't know what you don't know. But like once you do know it's in there, I think at that point, regardless where you're at, listening this in this episode, once you get the truth, man, it's time to freaking take action. You've got to go do something. You can't be stagnant. And you've got to find proximity of whatever that growth is, wherever I got to go. I mean, like in my career, how many years did I barely get paid to do anything? I had to go I had to jump into proximity where other professionals, people that are way better, that had the wisdom and work for free and figure out how to do it. And then I grew to grow in other ways. But, I think in faith, I mean, it's a long journey, so like what's your closing encouragement, thoughts, direction that you want to encourage people listening to this podcast? Because again, we've talked about a lot. I've done a lot of weaving. I don't think you've done as much as I have, but we've jumped on a lot. What's your final direction, encouragement for people to get out of this one?
The King of the universe has given you something to steward. All of you. Married, single, divorced, widowed, father, not father, mother, not mother. There's something in your life that God has given you, and you can look at this like the parable of the talents, right? 10 talent servant, 5 talent servant, 1 talent servant, right? The parable of the talents, if you haven't read that, basically the first 2 servants double their talent, and the last one buries it. And if you're burying your talents, you're in trouble, right? That's not what God made you to do. And so what we must do is steward what we have. And I think about it like this. Me and my wife really want to buy a new house. And we've been renting a house for a couple of years that is not in great shape. We haven't done anything to fix it because it's not our house, and we didn't want to dump a bunch of money into a rental house. Recently, we started fixing it up. Spent thousands of dollars painting and making it nice because my wife was really disappointed when we couldn't buy a house. And so the way I thought about it is if I gave Wiley, my oldest son, a car, and he treated it like garbage, didn't keep it clean and wrecked it. If he came to me and said, Dad, I want another car, what would I say?
No, I don't think this one.
You can go buy another car, right? So I look at the house in that same way as a talent, as something to steward. This is something he's given me to take care of. And I need to leave it better than I found it. The same goes for your wife, for your children, for your job, right? Everybody puts all this emphasis on the church and what the church is supposed to do, right? We are the church. Me and you are the church. The guy that we walk out of here and meet that's a believer is the church. And God has you on a path. And on this path, he's going to place people along the path. Some people are to pour into you. Other people are for you to pour into. But most of the time, it's an exchange of lessons, right? Some people stay on the path for 20 years. Some people are on the path for a short period of time. The fact remains that those people on your path are for you to steward, for you to love, right? And if you do not do this, you're burying your talent. You are not doing what the King has asked you to do. And so the same goes with the church. If you go into church on Sundays, listen to the sermon, walk out of there, don't love people in the church, you don't love people at your job, you don't love people that live in your home with you, you are wildly missing the mark. And you don't have to go to church to do these things. You can love people at work. But it starts at your home. The most important thing that God's going to give you to steward in your life as a man is your wife. The second most important thing he's going to give you to steward is your children. And the greatest gift you can give your children is a beautiful example of a husband loving a wife, leading a wife, right? All of this truth is in the Bible. It's there to find. And we just so happen to live in a world where you can Google it. What are all the verses in the Bible about being a husband? Google it and freaking read it, right? So
Easy.
Stewarding what God has given you right now and not bitching and moaning about what you don't have, right, is key. Being thankful for what God has given you right now is key, right? So my final word of wisdom here, right, is focus on the good and ignore the bad. The good will become greater and the bad will become lesser. Do that in every area of your life. Do it with your wife. Do it with your children. Love them the way Christ loves you, and your life will change. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I hope it doesn't take too long to get you back.
Nah, I'm just right up the road.
Maybe not. No, man. I appreciate your time, and I know there's going to be at least one or two people that's impacted by your testimony, and we didn't really dive into it, but too deep. But that's something I'd love to dive in later on another episode. But
Okay.
no, I mean, like my hope and prayer is that people can take relational experience, practical experience, from what you're doing out there, and you're doing amazing work for the kingdom. But my hope is that they can just take a little nugget from this one and just deepen their walk with Christ.
Me too.
All right. I guess we'll see you on the next one.
All right, buddy. Thanks.
Yeah.